Hello and welcome to the Conversational Hypnosis Academy. It's Scott Jansen here again, and welcome on board to how to dominate your stop smoking sessions in half the time while still charging a premium rate. Now, I'm very excited about what we're going to be learning over the next 3 to 4 sessions, because you'll be gaining an exclusive look into some insider secrets that I've used over the last decade to dominate the stop smoking industry, to work with clients in 1 to 2 sessions to have them completely overcome smoking itself, instead of the normal 5 to 6 that a therapist would expect a client to be working with them. Now, what I want to do before we get into the actual content and the learning strategies is set a bit of a foundation on what this product is about, what you're going to be learning, and the outcome. So first off, I want to make it abundantly clear that I will not be showing you exactly how to do a stop smoking session. I won't be showing you the number one method out there or the number one method that I know to help smokers quit. I won't be showing you the step-by-step formula that I exclusively use with all the stop smoking sessions that I do, because I want to bring your attention to this. I want you to realize, as a therapist or someone that's looking into hypnosis to start a career, or if you're more the advanced and you've been working with smokers for a long time, that there is no one way. So if you're a therapist taking this training, you'll probably agree with that all your smoking sessions are different. Just like all your weight loss sessions tend to be different, just like all your anxiety and your confidence sessions seem to be different. And the truth is definitely abundant here as well. So the first idea I want to present to you in our training together, and it's a really important idea, is I want you to drop the mindset that there's one way to do smoking. Now, there are many. You can work with symbolism, you can work with learning strategies, you can do stop smoking session with simple stories, you can do stop smoking sessions with external trance procedures, you can do stop smoking sessions with just about anything. So what makes a stop smoking therapist so successful? What I want to do over our training together is show you how to set up every single stop smoking session that you do for absolute success. So it really takes the pressure off the actual technique that you decide to use, and the setup and the conclusion to the session are the most important factors we're going to concentrate on, which means that any technique you have in your arsenal, you can use. If you're not familiar with other techniques, we will have other products that you can take on board to conform these ideas together and come up with something that's simple. But I want you to realize it's the actual setup of a stop smoking session that's going to make you a success. It's this setup procedure that's going to show your clients the intention you have and the intention they have to quit that's so strong that you can charge whatever you want as a stop smoking therapist and get paid for it. Now, this is something that I want to keep abundantly clear as well, is we want to make sure that you're still able to charge premium rates while cutting back your stop smoking sessions. And like I said, it's all in the setup. So we're going to spend a lot of time over the next few sessions looking at how to set things up. And it's not only easy, it's a lot of fun, and it can be transferable to other types of clients that you work with, whether anxiety or weight loss or whatnot. So this is where we're headed. We're going to be looking at not having to deal with clients that come in to see us that either think smoking can't be fixed with hypnosis, or that the therapist must do 3, 4, 5, 6. I've sometimes seen up to 10 sessions just for a stop smoking client. We want to expel this myth, which we'll get into in a moment, and work with our clients just like we would with anything else in 1 to 2 sessions, while still charging that premium rate, of course. So consider that for your career. Let's say you're doing 5 or 6 sessions now and you're charging whatever you charge. Imagine being able to charge the same rate, but doing it in maybe half or a quarter of the time, having to see a client maybe once or twice instead of 6 to 10 times. What would that do for your career? So it's something I want you to keep in the back of your mind throughout our training together. So what I'd like to do first, before we get into the content, is just to look at a few myths and a few mindset problems that therapists tend to hold on to as an exclusive idea that must be covered through a stop smoking session. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is this idea of the mindset that that smoking is a different category in regards to anxiety and weight loss, etc. Now, what do I mean by category? Let me give you an example. If you've done any hypnosis training, or you've done a hypnotherapy diploma, or you're clinically trained, whatever the case may be, you'll tend to find that hypnosis schools, especially in Australia where I did all my study, is they tend to make smoking a separate category for the learning process. We would spend, let's say, a couple of days doing anxiety, weight loss, confidence issues, and all of the above. And then they would pre-tell us that the next day is going to be about smoking. Make sure you come tomorrow because we're going to look exclusively about smoking. We're going to spend the day on smoking, and we're going to look at different strategies to help overcome a smoker. So what has this done, first of all, throughout your training? What this has done is set and primed in your unconscious minds that smoking can be a different category, that it might be different or harder in some cases because you needed a whole day just based on smoking. So the first idea I want to, the first mindset I want to break inside you as a therapist is do not treat smoking as a separate category. Smoking can be viewed upon as the same as anxiety, the same as weight loss, and the same as phobias and things like that. Yes, there are different strategies. Yes, there are different questioning techniques and different cycles you can run through, absolutely. But the mindset is key. Because as a therapist, if we go into the mindset with working with stop smoking clients that I need to see you 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 times, you're priming them and not only yourself that you cannot do it in the first 1 to 2 sessions. And by our training together, I guarantee that's what we're going to be doing. You'll have every tool available to do your stop smoking sessions in 1 to 2 sessions, and it'll be a lot more fun and actually give you more freedom and less anxiety as a therapist because we're going to break that category. The next myth I want to look at, and this comes from the training schools themselves and something that I see is rampant across and inside the hypnosis industry, is that in order to create a successful stop smoking session, there are certain criteria you must meet, or the therapist must meet. They must meet the criteria of the client being bored, the social acceptance, the stress, the hunger, the anxiety, the addiction, and there's many more. So what is this about? Let me give you an example. What would tend to happen is a therapist would bring a client in and they would treat each session from one of these elements. They'll first work on the boredom idea, send the client away, have the client come back maybe a couple of days later or a week later. And then they'll work on the social anxiety. Then they'll do the same thing with the stress. And you can see how these sessions can start to stack up. Now, I don't want to knock this as an approach, but again, we're here to learn some advanced strategies that are actually very, very simple to not do these sessions and these packs of sessions in 6 to 7 sessions. We can do them in 1 to 2 maximum, but still charge the same rate. This gives you more time as a therapist to maybe book more clients in or get other things done. And it doesn't restrict you to only working with those 4 or 5 or 6 categories. Now, the reason I think this is important is because I want you to consider where this idea would come from. How is it possible that someone throughout the history of hypnosis has exclusively put down that these are the different categories that only clients need to work with? Now, I'm not saying that those categories aren't correct. What I want to point out is I want to break this mindset that these are the only things that can cause a client to stop smoking. That if you cover all of these, this is the only way a client will quit. I want you to dispel that myth. I want you to break that mindset, and I want you to go into this that anything's possible. That a smoker smoking cigarettes can be caused by anything. That a client coming in for anxiety could have anxiety from anything. A client coming in for weight loss issues can have these weight loss issues from anything. And if you're a therapist, you've probably heard an abundance of stories that seem quite bizarre about why people have these addictions and phobias. So these are the 2 myths I want to dispel first. First, this idea of separating smoking inside your business as a separate category. So I want to break that mindset. And also this idea that you must work with these 5 or 6 different criteria to have a successful session. I want to show you by the end of our process today that not only will you have successes in that 1 to 2 session, but sometimes you won't even have to cover the idea of boredom, stress, anxiety, because it will never come up. What we want to do is set a different mindset. And the mindset I'd like you to create for yourself, not only that anything's possible, is that any tool or any method can be used for a stop smoking session. And also realizing that we need to place the power back in the client. We need to place the power back in the client's unconscious mind to do all the work for us. And I will break that idea down a little bit further lately. So hopefully this start of our training together has either dispelled some myths or sort of lightened up the mood, if you will, in regards to working with smokers. Because just like working with weight loss and anxiety and confidence issues, working with smokers can be just as much fun. And it's an actual really nice way to earn an income to help people overcome an addiction that tends to ruin people's lives. So you get the best of both worlds. So what are we going to be looking at throughout our training together? I'm going to look at 3 simple principles. Now, what's a principle? How is a principle different than a technique? As you recall at the start of our training, at the start of this first session, I did point out that I will not be showing you exactly the technique I use, because there is no one way to do this. You can bring any technique, any method, even if it's an NLP type method, into this, but by just putting it inside these techniques, these principles I'm going to show you over our sessions together, you can create the perfect foundation for every one of your clients to quit, while still charging that premium rate, of course. So the 3 principles I want to look at is the idea of priming our clients for success. We want to look at simple testing cycles, and we're going to look at setting the perfect environment and context. Now, I'm a conversational hypnotherapist. We teach conversational hypnosis as well, but I want to point out as well, this is not exclusive just for conversational hypnosis. Yes, it may come across as we can be very conversational with the methods that we're using, but if you want to add some more structure to this or bring in your own clinical knowledge into this and just use these principles, you are more than welcome to, and you'll notice that they fit quite seamlessly as well. So these are the 3 principles I want to cover, and this is definitely the start of the setup phase, but it's also the conclusion phase, and it's very simple. So what we're going to have is the setup. You'll put your technique or method in the middle of this, and then you'll have the end, which is the conclusion, and this will create a perfect 360 environment around a stop smoking session to make sure you walk out being an absolute success and your clients walk out praising you for what you've done, and you make that career the way it should be. So what I want to look at first is this idea of priming. Let's look at the first principle over the first session to have a look at priming and what priming is. So what is priming? Maybe you've heard of priming before and you're thinking maybe you use it inside your hypnosis sessions, maybe you don't, maybe this is the first time you've actually heard of this idea of priming. So I'm going to give an example of what priming is. Let's say you were going to work with a client and you asked your client to watch a horror movie before the session actually begun. Let's say they sit there for an hour or 2, they watch a DVD on something that could be quite bloody in content, it could be a little bit scary, there could be some jumping scenes, it could be some screaming, and total mayhem happens through the session. So let's say you've done that with your client and then you've asked them to come through into what should be a peaceful environment, as we know hypnosis can be and should be. And what do you think is going to happen? This is the priming effect we're looking at. What's going to tend to happen is a client's going to come in remembering what they've just watched, and it's going to set a direction for the unconscious mind. It's going to release these ideas in the unconscious mind during the session, and throughout the session, whatever technique or method you use, you could come across those ideas from the movie they've just seen. So it's really about, we want to make the perfect priming for our clients to prime more for success and less for failure. So how do we do this? Well, what I'd like to do is move on to the actual first part of our training together. Now we've got a little bit of theory out of the way. So join me on the next session when we exclusively look at how to work with priming, how to create the right priming environment, how to prime for success, and actually how we can start priming for these 1 or 2 sessions only and not have to deal with 5, 6, maybe 10 sessions with smokers. So when you're ready, jump over to the next session and let's look exclusively on priming your role as a therapist and for absolute success. We'll see you on the next session. Hi, and welcome back. So let's jump straight into the first principle. We looked at the example before this session of this idea of priming. So let's take that example before and start to set a contrast and go more in depth about what we're talking about with priming. So we looked at the idea of a client sitting down watching a horror movie before they come to see us or before they come in for a session. And we've unconsciously set a priming environment for what the session could be about. And it's actually setting the direction of where a session could go. So this unconscious environment is something we want to set first or prime first, but instead of priming it for what happened inside the horror movie, let's prime it for success. Let's prime it for learning, let's prime it for safety, and let's prime it for everything a session would need in order to have a client overcome smoking. Now let's add one more thing to this. Not only have a client overcome smoking, but have a client overcome smoking quickly. Because that's what this class is about. That's what the training is about. Is how a client can do this extremely quickly without having to see us 5, 6, up to 10 times, up to a dozen times I've seen in some cases. Want to get this done in 1 to 2 sessions. Now, are you always going to have a client overcome smoking in 1 to 2 sessions? Of course not. So we want to stack the deck in our favor. It's not to say that sometimes clients may have numerous attempts to do this, but there's something interesting we can do with this. If you find your sessions having to rerun themselves over 3 to 4 sessions, we can start to add in other categories of their life that would help improve not only the smoking, but improve their life in general. And we'll look at that contrast frame towards the end of our training together. But let's take little baby steps for now. So this priming idea, we're setting an unconscious environment for success. So what I'd like to do now is just look at a small list that I've put together for myself, and something I always make sure I cover with every session. So you might be familiar with this idea of what is called a pre-talk. Now, a pre-talk is a hypnotherapy tool that would be used before we work with a client to give them an idea of not only what the session's about, but maybe start to give them some ideas if they're extremely new to hypnosis. Now, again, I don't want to knock this as an approach, but I want to look at how we can create your pre-talk and priming and make it one little chat with your client. So the pre-talk will usually cover things like what will happen during the session, what a client should feel or will feel, the outcome of the session, what a client will need to do during the session, what hypnosis is, what hypnosis isn't, and all that good stuff. So I don't want to take that out of the equation, but I want to point out a couple little things that actually happen inside this pre-talk that can actually work against you and not for you. Now, over the decade that I've been, or up to 14 years that I've been a hypnotherapist working with clients exclusively, I was never introduced to this pre-talk until I came across it a couple of years later and realized that I'd been doing successful sessions without it. So I want to point out that the pre-talk isn't always necessary. It can be used, and it's a great way to start a session, and sometimes clients need that. But I want to take out, again, this idea that you must do something. You must follow something step by step by step to get an outcome, because it just isn't the case. Every client's going to be different. Every session's going to be different. You might even find yourself in a different environment other than your office doing a session and realize you don't even need a hypnotherapy office to be a hypnotherapist. So what is the pre-talk about? How can we use this pre-talk idea, but direct it in a way that's going to help us and serve us rather than go up against us? So the first idea I want to look at this pre-talk is this idea of telling clients what hypnosis is and what hypnosis isn't. Now, anytime we're giving client information, what are we doing? We are priming them to this unconscious environment. Now, by telling a client what hypnosis is and isn't, I want you to really consider, does it really do anything for your session? Does it add to your success, or does it detract from it? Does it warn your clients about certain things that are possible? And does it prime your client, even though you say hypnosis is not about me finding out your deepest, darkest secrets? I won't be getting your credit card details off you. I won't be making you cluck like a chicken, which is the normal things hypnotherapists will say, maybe to create a little bit of rapport. But what have we done right there? Although we're saying it won't, or it will not, or I won't be, it's still priming them that there could be a possibility. Maybe a client will sit there and go, oh, that's very nice of them. They're not going to get my deepest, darkest secrets from me. They're not going to rip me off. They're not going to take advantage of the situation. But does that mean they can? Maybe this person has done it before. Maybe the therapist has the skills to be able to do this. I better be on alert and make sure I don't go too far into hypnosis just in case they try this funny business on me. So this is a possibility. So by telling a client what hypnosis is and isn't is really detracting your success rather than adding anything to it. And right now we want to add things to your sessions and take out the things that aren't quite working for us. So what can we do with this pre-talk now that we can take away this hypnosis is and isn't, still use the same idea, but add things in it that would be more exclusive to helping the session rather than detracting? So let's look at this. I want to give you a little quick speech, and then I'm going to break it down into the steps that I've used so we can look at it a bit more formally. And again, it'd be a perfect opportunity for write these things down. Now, Being a conversational hypnotherapist, I don't use scripts, and it's totally what you do with what works with your sessions and how you treat this. But what I want to do for you as well is start to tend to direct you away from this idea of scripting things, because we want this stuff to be natural, because it's actually going to prime something that's going to help in our favor if it's natural, rather than something that's generic that you've pre-written before. So let's look at something I do. If you can imagine, if you will, I've got my client sitting in my office. They're coming in for me for a stop smoking session. The first thing I want to do, or the second thing I want to do, we'll look at the questioning phase a little bit more later on how we can use questions to our advantage. It's part of the priming sequence as well. Is I'm going to say something like this, and I'll just give you off the top version of this, knowing that you can do this in any amount of ways. The things I'm talking about aren't necessarily really important. It's the principle, it's the priming, it's the environment that I'm setting up for the client and myself. So it sounds something like this. Okay, Joe Blog, so we're going to be going through a stop smoking session today. I want you to realize that stop smoking sessions are easy. And the best thing of all is you as the client, you don't have to do a single thing, is just sit there, enjoy the trance experience, and know that you're going to quit smoking by the end of our interaction today. And I want you to also notice that trance is not only relaxing, but it has a world of therapeutic outcomes you can get, even beyond just the smoking. So I want you to realize all you need to do today is just enjoy this learning experience, because today's about you. Today's about you overcoming something in your life that has maybe been restricting you to the person you want to be, and give you more freedom beyond just the cigarettes. So you can get more stuff done in your life. So while throughout our session today, I want you to think about, what do you get from stop smoking? What do you get from having the freedom of not being in control, or having a cigarette in control of you as a person? What do you get more of in life? Think about that. Think of all the positive things you'll get from today by overcoming smoking. And the best thing of all is it's so simple to overcome smoking. We're going to have a lot of fun together, and you're going to learn a great variety of things about yourself that's not only going to improve yourself as a person, but you're going to be witness to the unlimited power of your unconscious mind. And I want you to realize that your unconscious mind will do all this for you naturally. So let's pause it right there. Now what I suggest you do is listen back to that little pre-talk, if you will. So what is my pre-talk talking about? It's talking about learning. It's talking about success. You even hear me say that you'll overcome it in one session. You'll hear me say talking about a little bit about the unconscious minds. And I actually talked a little bit about what trance is going to feel like, what it's going to be. Now you notice I didn't tell it what it should be, or what it could be, or other things like that, or what it is or it isn't. I'm still using that same idea, but you'll notice the direction and the environment that I'm setting is all positive. Now just even listening to that should make you start to feel a little bit happy. You'll probably hear it in my voice. I started to get really involved in that because it's a pleasant thing to hear, and it's a real pleasant thing to tell our clients. So imagine you as a client, your therapist told you that. Instead of telling a client what hypnosis is and what it isn't, and what trance is and where it started and what trance should be, imagine hearing that itself. So that maybe went for 15 or 20 seconds. So imagine doing this for maybe a couple of minutes before your client comes in. What would this do for it? You're sitting down, your client's sitting there, and you go into this little spiel for a couple of minutes about what it is, what's going to happen, what's their expectation. Now, the key thing I want to point out is this idea of expectation of the client. Because what tends to happen when a client comes in to see us is they think they need to do something. They think they either need to perform, or they need to prepare themselves mentally before they come in, or they need to do certain things or cover certain criteria to have a successful session. And if you'll notice inside my priming, I just pointed out and said, you don't have to do a thing, except enjoy it, learn. This session is about you. This session is about uncovering your unlimited power to be more than the person you are right now, and to never be controlled by cigarettes again. And there I go again, off to a little priming, what we could call a priming story or a pre-talk. So imagine repeating these same ideas over and over and over, because repetition is important inside hypnosis. Now, why would I repeat the same idea with different scenarios of what this idea is about? It's because I want the unconscious mind to prime. It's always listening. We need to realize the unconscious mind is always listening. Doesn't mean it's going to get it the first time, but if I keep repeating in that couple of minutes of the pre-talk, learning, safety, having fun, no expectations, overcoming smoking quickly, if I keep repeating that same idea, Joe Bloggs' unconscious mind will finally get the idea and go, got it, excellent. I'm going to hold you to that, which is fine for us as a therapist because we're going to act on our promise later a little bit more fully. But once it's heard it, what's it starting to do? It's starting to prepare the mind for what's about to happen. Let's consider this. A client comes in for the stop smoking session. We spend a little bit of time on the pre-talk. I wonder if there's another place that we could actually put this little priming scenario so we've done it twice. So let's consider this as an idea. Let's imagine your client calls you for the first time and calls up and says, "Hey, Scott, I want to book in for a stop smoking session." And instead of going straight into your price and asking about the problem and all that sort of stuff, which is an important idea, what if you went straight into your little priming pre-talk? He said, "Oh, fantastic. You know what? I've worked with many smokers just like you. And you know what? The best thing about working with smokers, they have so much fun. I actually quit smoking in one session and they learn a great deal about themselves to be a new person without smoking." I mean, what does that sound like to you? So have a listen to that. What have I done at the end that's just a little bit different? I've added what's called a little tag phrase. I've asked them, give them a little bit of a spiel and ask them, "Hey, does that sound like something you want to go through?" Because I want to get a little bit of feedback. I want to take away this idea of talking at my clients and involve them inside the conversation. Now, why is this important? Because let's say I say, you're going to be learning, you're going to be about fun, it's going to be about safety. And I ask, what does that sound like to you? Does it sound like something you want to go through? And they go, "Yeah, but I was really hoping I'd feel really relaxed through the whole thing." Now I find out their criteria of what they want. So I say, "Oh, that is perfect." Because amongst everything we're going to go through, this session is going to be so relaxing that you'll probably want to stay in hypnosis for hours. And the great thing about that is we can not only help you overcome your smoking in today's session, but you get some time for yourself. You get some time to really take some time, put your feet up and relax while overcoming an addiction like smoking. So what have I done right there? I've gone into the second part of my prime, but I've pulled in their criteria of exactly what they want because I want to meet all the criteria from my client. I could ask them up front, but then I just want to repeat it back in this priming stage. So when I've done it once on the phone and then they come in, I get straight into the priming again. What have I done? I've alerted the unconscious mind that I'm holding up my promise. I've said it's going to be fun, it's going to be about learning, it's going to be excitement. And then I'm repeating those ideas back to them again when they come in to see me. So now I've done it twice. And it doesn't sound formatted. The client comes in expecting to be excited because I've primed them beforehand. They're going to be happy. They're going to be thinking, "Oh, thank God I finally get to overcome this issue." And then they hear me say it again. I've just added to my promise. I've really said, "Hey, I'm looking out for you today and I will promise this thing to you so you do get the experience that you want and you get the outcome you're after." So this is the priming stage. And already this is the first setup stage that we do after the questioning stage, which we'll get to later. So the second part, if you will, that's starting to set the right unconscious environment for the right type of session to happen. So let's look at the opposite we've looked at with the pre-talk in regards to setting up the session in the wrong way. The pre-talk, this idea of talking to a client and telling them what hypnosis is and isn't, can work. But we're setting the precedence and we're setting the wrong environment that it will take longer than 1 or 2 sessions. Imagine saying to a client when they call up or they come in, straight off the street or something like that, they're a walk-in, and they go, "Okay, so what's smoking about?" And you say, "Well, smoking is usually I would see a smoker 5 to 6 times. And the things we have to work on are things like boredom. We need to work on finding out why you smoke, which is important, of course. We need to work on your stress. We need to work on social acceptance." And I start to give them a category for everything that I think is causing them to smoke. So what have I primed right then? That it's going to take 5 to 6 sessions. Yes, I've talked about we're going to overcome these things, but now I'm laying down a prime and I'm setting an environment to say to the unconscious mind, "Hey, we need to take 6 to 10 or 5 to 6 sessions with this. Follow along." So why is this important to point out? Imagine this. Imagine you set up your session so correctly, even if you did it the opposite way of saying it's going to take this many sessions, and you have such a great first session, the unconscious mind picks up the pattern so quickly that it helps the client overcome all those categories. But then it realizes that you said, "Hey, you said 5 to 6 sessions. So I'm going to keep this client smoking because that's what you promised me." So we can look at this priming as a promise to the unconscious. Doesn't mean it's always going to get it correctly. Remember, we're stacking the deck in our favor. So this is an idea I want you to take away. is instead of telling a client how many sessions it could be, the categories that you must cover, the reasons why people smoke, and all that sort of stuff, it's important, but clients really don't need to hear it. Let's prime them in an opposite way. Let's tell them what the session's going to be about, what they're going to experience, how fun it's going to be, how quickly it is to quit smoking, and how they'll learn something about themselves that's going to help them start to overcome other things in their life. We're setting a direction for absolute success. So this is the priming phase. Now, if you're thinking, well, I don't know exactly when I need to say this stuff, don't worry. We're going to get to that later. I'm going to give you a logical step-by-step system. It's about 6 steps, and I'll tell you exactly where to put this priming process and where to put everything else like the questioning and looking at testing cycles and things like that. Right now, it's the principle. Hopefully this idea of the principle of setting the foundation, the actual environment for success is abundantly clear. So what I'd like you to do before the next session is create a list. When I first came across this idea of priming, I wrote a list of 5 to 6 things that I knew I wanted to put in every priming scenario that I was working with clients. And this began the setup for absolute success as a smoker. So that's a way we can tweak your pre-talk. We can still add the pre-talk, but we're setting more of an unconscious intention of success rather than telling them what hypnosis is and isn't. So when you're ready, what I'd like to do next is we're going to jump all the way towards the end of this smoking session and look at testing cycles, knowing that on our last session, we'll put it all together in a logical step. I just want to get this foundation out first so I know exactly what to do when it comes to those step-by-step formula. So I hope you enjoyed that part. Have a go at the priming. Even grab a friend or a family member and just give them a little bit of a priming about something they could look forward to, maybe the weekend or a little party that they're going to, and see how well priming works inside a client or people that you're talking to. We're priming for success, happiness, and learning, and not anything else. So let's jump over to the next session and start to look at different ways we can test our clients. We'll see you then. Hello and welcome back. So let's jump into testing. Let's look at testing cycles that we can test our clients to make sure they've quit. Now, what we've done right here is jumped all the way to the end of this stop smoking session because we first looked at priming, how to set the unconscious environment. But now we're going to look at testing, which is the opposite end, priming coming one of the first things we do, and testing being the end, because all the stuff in between, like your methods and your technique, will start to fit in quite well if we look at these first 2 categories first. So testing, in a nutshell, is to make sure our clients quit or have quit, and that we've done everything we can in our power to help them achieve this. And I want you to keep that idea in mind of everything we've done in our power to help them overcome this. So what is testing? Testing is making sure that the reason they've come in for the stop smoking session has been covered, and to make sure that other things that have made them smoke in the past have been eradicated and have been resolved as well. There's a couple of different categories I want to look inside of testing that will give you an exclusive look on to what I would say the most successful part of the sessions that I've done with my stop smokers to make sure they leave. Usually after one session, as you get better at this, it will not only become one session, but you could break it down in maybe half an hour or 40 minutes or sometimes 20-minute quick sessions, as long as you cover this testing cycle. Now, I don't exclusively just use testing right at the end, and I suggest you don't either. We'll look at ways you can input these little testing cycles at any point, even at the start, even during the priming of your session with your smoker. So let's look at the basics first. The first thing I want to look at is, let's say you've done your method, you've done your technique, they've come out of trance. Now we're at the point where we need to test them. We need to make sure what they experienced during the trance is enough for them to quit then and there. Knowing that we don't want to deal with this 5 or 6 sessions anymore, we'd like to get this done in 1 session, maybe 2. Now, what is the first testing thing we need to do? We first need to ask them, how do they feel? What happened as a result of you going into trance, and how do you feel? So how does this sound for a little testing question? You can use this question knowing there's many ways to ask it, but it's the principle and the direction that I'm setting that's important. Client comes out of trance and I say, hey, how do you feel? And they say, oh, great. Trance was fantastic. Remember, we set it up and we primed it like so beforehand. And I say, great. How do you feel about smoking right now? That's my first testing question. It's a very soft question because we're going to start off soft and we're going to move into a few harder testing questions at the end for a specific reason. And let's say they come out of trance, they're feeling relaxed, they're feeling great. And you say, how do you feel about smoking now? Let's say they say, well, I don't feel like a smoke. Excellent. You can almost tick the box, if there was a box to tick, that they've come out and they've done everything they needed to. And believe it or not, this is generally where therapists stop. They don't do any more than this. They get a, yes, I feel great from the session we just had, and I don't feel like a smoke now. I feel good. I think I've quit. And they would tend to send their clients away and wonder why maybe a couple of hours later their clients call up and say, hey, I started smoking again. Or a couple of days later they say, well, it didn't quite work. I started smoking again. I want a refund, or I need to come in for another session. And if the therapist has set it up beforehand to take 5 or 6 sessions, this is what the client comes out thinking. They'll go away, they'll start smoking again, and they'll go, well, he did say it was 5 or 6 sessions, so I guess I can smoke right up to the last session because I don't really have to quit until the 6th session. You could see how that conflict could start. So let's take it back to basics. Clients come out of trance, said, yep, I feel great. Said, how do you feel about smoking now? They say, I feel good. What I want to do is ask them, how do they know? Simply, how do you know you've quit? How do you know you feel good? How do you know you don't need a smoke? Well, I just don't feel like one. Excellent. So you can hear the testing question that I'm testing them about the answer they've given me. So this is the first part of the test. I might do this 3 or 4 times. Let me give you some simple questions that follow more of a logical line that you could ask, just to get the conversation flowing again from the trance I've just been in. So you've come out, you don't feel like a smoke now. Well, no, I don't. Excellent. So how do you know you don't feel like it? Well, I'm really relaxed right now. You are relaxed, aren't you? Did you need a cigarette to feel this relaxed? They say, well, no. Excellent. So your unconscious mind must have done something. So you don't feel like a smoke now. What do you think will happen later? Well, I don't think I'll smoke later either. How do you know? Well, the more I think about it, I don't really have those cravings anymore. Excellent. So you've come out of trance, you don't feel like a smoke now, and you think you won't smoke later. How good is that? Well done. Great job. So what have I done right there? You can hear it's very conversational. I'm using some of the criteria they've given me, and I'm just repeating back their success. We call this the echo effect. As they say they feel good, they don't feel like a smoke now, I just agree and go, yeah, great job. You know, you did a really great thing through that trance, and I know you don't want to smoke now, and it's awesome you don't feel like a smoke later too. Well done. I'm giving them positive reinforcement to let them know that the expectations, there was none, and whatever they did inside trance or their unconscious mind did was exactly the way they needed to quit. Now, if you were to send your client away after this, you probably have a 50-50 chance of it working. And sometimes I've forgotten to test or I've been in a rush, and that's all I've done, and I've hoped for the best and it's worked out perfectly. But again, we want to stack the deck in our favor. So the first other part of the test, that's the first part of the test, we call this small testing or very light testing, is I want to move into a little bit of a harder test. I want to make sure that I've covered everything they need. So the first testing cycle really I want to look at is what I call emotional testing. Because I want them to realize that if they feel great now and they feel relaxed, is later on, they're not going to feel like this. So I need them to be aware of it. So how would this sound? Let's say I've done a couple of light testing questions. I'm getting them to feel good about the job they've done. I'll say, well, you feel relaxed and good now, but you got to realize you're not always going to feel like this. So let's say a couple of hours from now, you go home and you start to feel a little bit bored or something like that. Do you think you'll need a smoke then? So I've given them a setup scene. I've given them a scene of the possibilities, and I want them just to test it against themselves. So how do I do this? I just say, look, imagine yourself later on, you're a little bit bored. Do you think you would need a smoke then? Just really think about it. And the important thing to do right here, although I've said imagine, and imagine could almost sound like it's not going to happen, but I want them to really consider it. So I don't want to rush this process. This testing can sometimes take 10, 15, 20 minutes. So once I've said imagine yourself later, a little bit bored, hear the little bit, I don't want to say extremely bored because that's a little bit of a harder test, a little bit bored, do you think you'll smoke? Just really think about it. Maybe put yourself in the scenario, you're a little bit bored later on today. Do you think they'll smoke? And I want to let them sit there and think about it. Let them think a bit more, and they come back and say, no, I don't think I will. Excellent. How do you know? Well, you know, as I think about myself being bored, I'm actually excited that I can maybe do some push-ups or some sit-ups or go for a run around the block instead. Fantastic. What have they done right here? They've actually given me what's called a resource about something they'll do instead of smoking. So right now, we're really stacking the deck in our favor right now. So that's a little bit of a harder test. And I want to make it a little bit harder with this emotional as well. So I want to do this 2 or 3 times. So I want to sound something like this. So let's say you go back to work on Monday and you get to work and you're stressed. You find all this paperwork on your desk and you're just not off to a good start to the day. Do you think you'll smoke then? Just put yourself in that scenario. Just imagine it for a moment. Take your time and just make sure that you don't feel like a smoke just by thinking about it. And again, I'm going to let them think about it. Maybe I'll help them build the scene up and say, where would you be sitting? What's happening at work right now? And I want them to give me the answer. Now, let's just keep going on the positive for now. We'll look at some troubleshooting methods later if it's a no for the answer they give us. And let's say they thought about it for a while and they say, no, I don't think I will. Excellent. How do you know? What do you do instead? Well, you know what? Throughout the trance today, I realized that I would get stressed at work and I'd have a smoke. But now I just think I'll go have a cup of coffee instead and I'll just laugh about the stress. Fantastic. So now they've given me another resource. Excellent. So I want to give them one more try of this emotional testing. I'm going to do a little bit harder. So I'm going to add to the scene. So let's say you're at work, all this paperwork, you're stressed out, and your boss is yelling at you. And you find out your pay's getting cut, and there's a possibility of layoffs and shrinking inside the business, and you might actually lose your job. Imagine how stressful that's going to be. And you can hear how hard that test is going to be, although I don't want them to lose their job, and God forbid that would ever happen to anybody, but it's just that little possibility. I want to make sure that smoking has covered all the categories and possibilities inside their life. And again, let them think about it. Tell them to take their time. And let's say afterwards they think about it, say, no, I really wouldn't. I'll just go get another job. I've got the skills. I feel confident now, and all of the rest. So what I've done right there, I've really pushed them, and I'm saying, hey, I want to test you on all of this sort of stuff. I want to make sure if this possibilities come up, I don't want you to fall back onto cigarettes regardless. So that's emotional testing. The next thing I want to look at is something quite sneaky, which I call scenario testing. Now, scenario testing is putting them in an environment where they could smoke again. So let's consider this. Let's say my client comes out of trance and I want to start off with environmental testing. I want to put some scene testing. I want to make sure that if they go home, they're not going to smoke and all that stuff. Now, when we talked about emotional testing before, I'm not saying you've got to do all three in a row, then go to the environment, and then go to the last way of testing. You can put them all in together. You can do just some, do the other. But realistically, I'm going to test my client maybe a dozen times because there's something I'm trying to do with this testing, which I'll reveal in a moment. So what's the environmental testing or the scenery testing? Is I want to say, hey, you told me before that your partner smokes. So you've come out of trance, you say you're a non-smoker now. Just imagine you get home and you walk in and your partner's having a smoke. Do you think you have a cigarette then? So you're seeing I'm giving them an environment where they would normally smoke because there could be some associations as to the reason they smoke in that environment. And again, just let them think about it. As a therapist, you don't need to do anything more than just set the scene, drop them in the scene and say, hey, think about this. Is this a possibility? And let's say my client, Joe Blogg, says, no, I don't think I will. I'll just go in the other room until she's finished. So that's a slight test, a very small test. So now I'm going to add to this test. Let's say they told me beforehand that they're actually going to a barbecue after this session, and they know that their friends are going to be smoking there as well. You can see the environment we're setting up. And I say, okay, imagine you go to this barbecue after our session today. You're a non-smoker now, feeling great, and you go there and all your best friends are there, and they're sort of pestering you saying, hypnosis doesn't work. You couldn't have quit. You've been smoking for 30 years, and now you're telling me after seeing that therapist once you're a non-smoker, just try one, just see if it works. Just put it in your mouth, see if you find those old cravings you had before. And I'll just say, think about that as a possibility. And now, do you feel like a smoke? Do you think you'd fall back on smoking then? I'll be quiet and let them consider it. I'm just setting up these testing sequences and getting harder and harder with each one. And it's just, I'm putting possibilities. And they come back and say, no, I'll just laugh in their face and walk away and feel free as a person because I don't smoke anymore. Fantastic. And I'll give them one more try. Let's say they've told me not only did their partner smoke and they're going to a barbecue beforehand. Let's say they say on the car on the way to work they used to smoke because it would help them de-stress from all the traffic. I now want to put them inside that little scene. Now, before I get into this, and you can see where we're going, consider where I'm getting all this scenery from. Where am I getting these ideas and this environments that I'm setting up for the testing? It's probably what my client told me before. I've had a bit of a chat to them with the questioning cycle we'll get through a little bit later, and I found out this information through the questions. I might have asked, hey, what are you doing after this session today? Well, I'm going to a barbecue. I've got this. Yeah, my partner does smoke. Maybe it was a question I asked them beforehand. So I'm just remembering the criteria they've given me before to add to my testing sequences later. So you can see how simple that could be. Or if they haven't, I'll just give them a mock scenario. I'll find, hey, what do you do with your spare time? I like to go to barbecues. I'm very social. I know how to add that into my testing cycle. So let's sit them in the car and say, hey, there's traffic, your air conditioning's not working, it's in Brisbane, it's stinking hot, there's people beeping and swearing at you, cutting you off, maybe someone scratched your car by running too close next to you in their car. Do you feel like a smoke then? I just want to keep going harder and harder and harder. And if they come out and say, no, I'll do this instead, they've given me another resource, excellent, fantastic job. So that's the 2 testing cycle. What's the last one? I call this environmental testing. Very similar to scenery, but it's actually the combination of the emotion and the scenery test. But what I'm going to do instead of me as a therapist coming up with something, I'm going to ask them. I'm going to ask them, what do they think would have them fall off the wagon of being a smoker, of being a non-smoker? So I'm going to say, hey, we know you're a non-smoker now. Is there anything other than the barbecue, other than the stress in the car, other than your partner smoking, other than the stress at work, other than anything else we cover that you think would put you back on smoking? So what have I done right here? I've done something actually very strategic. I've taken all the pressure off me as a therapist and I put it back on them and said, you need to now do a bit of work. You need to think of anything, even if it's a camping trip that you only go on once every 4 years, that you like to have a smoke in the tent before you go to sleep. I want to make sure they remember that. And I'll keep pestering them and say, come on, you've got to think of something. Is there anything? And they say, well, I can't think of anything. Well, try harder. We've got plenty of time. Take your time. Is there anything at all? Anything in your life that would have you fall back on smoking? Now, I've done this as a real example, and the tent example I just gave you was the real example. I had a lady come in, and I gave this option to her, and she sat there for maybe a couple of minutes and thought, oh, I just remembered we actually go camping every 4 years, and I like to have a smoke then. And I had to add this to my testing scenario. Luckily, she said, well, I don't think I'll have one then either. But it was lucky she came up with it because then I had a chance to test against it. And I just want my client to sit there and come up with something. Even if they can't, just keep pestering them with a nice approach. Don't want to be too overt about it and push them and say, think of something. But just let them know, hey, we want to make sure we cover all of these grounds. So what am I doing? What's all this testing thing about? What I'm trying to do as a therapist, what most therapists are very scared of doing, is I want to break my session. I want to ruin all the good work I've done, and I want to ruin all the good work they have done. Now, why is this? It seems a little bit strange that I actually want my client to fail. I'm actually testing them to have them fail in front of me. And that's the key idea right there, to have them fail in front of me. So how would I know they failed? Let's say I'm testing them and they say, well, no, I think I would smoke then and there under these circumstances. Excellent. Now I can do a quick session on that. And because they're in front of me and they're still going to be a little bit of a trance, it's going to be very quick, very easy to resolve, but it's easier for me to resolve it then and there rather than them go away for a couple of weeks and come back and be disappointed with their results. Because they're either going to be disappointed at me, or they're more than likely going to be disappointed in themselves, which means there's other factors being introduced into stuff like failure, or I can't do it, or hypnosis doesn't work. And these could come up against me in the session. Now I've got to deal with them. I'd rather deal with them then and there. So at any time a client says, well, I think I'd smoke here and here, you would have to pat yourself on the back and be so grateful that this come out now in front of you, because you can fix it immediately. And this actually is the big reason why clients relapse. So this testing cycle is an exclusive insider look of how to stop clients relapsing. And already you can probably think into yourself in regards to this testing, thinking, wow, if I get all the criteria of boredom, stress, and addiction, hunger, whatever those criteria are that normal therapists set up beforehand, if I do that all in one session, they could quit in one session. And that's exactly the mindset I want you to have. Instead of taking 6 sessions or 10 sessions to cover all the criteria that smokers should have, or that therapists tell their clients they should have, I'm doing it all in 1, maybe 2 sessions. And usually the second session is just a little follow-up, might be one little thing I missed, not always going to get everything. And that session might take 10 or 15 minutes as a little backup session. But 95% of my work, if not higher, is done in that one session. So that's the testing cycle. We did emotional testing. We're finding out, letting them know, hey, you're not going to always feel this good. We've done some scenery testing. Hey, your partner said she smokes at home. Do you think you'll smoke then? We've done environmental testing. We're putting the pressure back on the client and say, hey, can you think of anything that would put you back onto smoking, because I want to cover this now. So that's the last part of the session. And what I'm trying to do with this testing is I'm trying to break them. Now, I want to point out something of exclusive value right here. Don't go all the way to the hard testing first. I've seen therapists do this, and it's not a nice environment to set up. Start small, get harder and harder and harder and harder. Now, in my own career, I've had a lot of clients after many testings of maybe a dozen testings, they get pretty bored of it and they go, hey, I'm quitting. I promise you, I will not smoke. Can I just leave now? I want to enjoy my life. So by the time a client gets a little bit annoyed with me, I know they've quit. And I can say to them, hey, if you leave now, it's because you wanted to. I'm happy to sit here all day and make sure we get everything. But if you're happy to leave now, all the results are back on you then. That's a perfect place to be as a therapist and as a client. We're giving them the power back from what the smoking used to do for them. So that's the testing cycle. That's usually the last part of the session. But you could see how you could put those little testing cycles at any point throughout your technique that you use. Maybe using symbols or maybe using external trance procedures. You can put those little testing things in anyway. Let's say a client experiences a bit of hypnotic phenomena. They get a hand levitation. And you say, well, as that hand's lifting now, how do you feel about smoking? Well, I don't think I'd smoke anymore. Excellent. Great. So I've had a little test there as well. And you can do that anyway. It's not exclusive just to the end of the session. So I hope you enjoyed that testing. You can see how priming and testing are starting to really set a positive environment for absolute success. So the third principle I want to look at is setting a context. And actually the context will actually pretty much come after the priming, and it's part of the priming sequence, but we're going to set a context to allow their unconscious mind power to help them overcome smoking, not the other way around. We want to make sure you as a therapist realize that you are not doing anything except setting the environment, and then we're giving all the power back to their unconscious mind to do all the work for us and all the work for the client. It takes less stress off, it takes all the stress off the client and takes all the stress off you as therapists. You really don't have to do much for it. So let's look at setting the right context to let the unconscious mind know that, hey, you can do this. You've got all the power. You've done this before with other certain things in their life. I'm just going to remind you of when you've done that. And this is what we talk about, setting the right context. So when you're ready, let's move over to the third principle and set this context for absolute success. We'll see you then. Hello and welcome back. So let's just quickly recap on what we've covered so far. We have looked at the priming cycle that we will run a client through. So we're priming them more for success, priming them for happiness, fun throughout the session, relaxation. We're priming that we can all be done in one session to become a non-smoker. And then we looked at the testing cycle. So we jumped all the way to the end of the stop smoking interaction and looked at testing. We looked at the simple testing, the very light testing. We looked at the environmental testing, the scenery testing, the emotional testing. And remember, the attitude with our testing is to try and break what we've done, to try and break the good work and the hard work that we've put into the session, so that if it does break, we can fix it then and there. Another attitude to take is to almost doubt that they've succeeded, to almost say, hey, you know what, you've been smoking for 30 years. How can it be this simple? Because I want them to give me the reasons why they have quit. I want to put all the power back in my clients. Rather than being the powerful therapist, I'm saying, hey, you did all of this. I did nothing. You're the powerful person. You have the powerful unconscious mind. You did all of this. And it's a very nice way to end a session, and it will leave your client leaving your session in absolute thanks to what you've done. And that story of being the lovely, welcoming therapist and allowing the client to grow from the session, that's the story you want your clients to tell other potential clients about you, because this is a simple way to actually fill up your diary as a therapist. So let's move on to the third principle I want to cover, which is setting the unconscious context. Now, where does this come from? What I tend to see a lot of therapists doing is taking the position that they're the therapist, they know everything. They're the therapist, they've worked with thousands of smokers before, and it's easy for them. They'll do all the work and their client just has to sit there and listen. Now, I don't want to knock that as an approach, because sometimes that very direct approach can work. But again, I want to show you other ways we can do this, because I want to introduce you to some simple key maneuvers that we can use with this context setting that will add more success to your sessions rather than detract from it. And we're looking at this idea of having a client leave feeling empowered rather than the therapist has done something to them. The therapist did all the quitting for them. They just followed along. So what is this about? I want you to think in your life, as the person listening to this, as the therapist, think in your life how many things you've overcome in your life Maybe you used to eat certain foods when you were younger that you no longer eat. Maybe you used to enjoy certain things. Maybe as a kid you loved video games and now you don't like them. Maybe as a kid you really enjoyed vegetables, but now as an adult you don't like them. Maybe as a kid you used to eat all those really sugary lollies that now as an adult you think about and go, oh, my teeth would rot, it would make me feel sick. How did you do that? At what point did you overcome that? What process did you use to overcome that? What simple steps did you follow to overcome that? And it'd be very hard to actually give us a list or actually pinpoint exactly how you did this. But I want you to realize one thing. You did do it because you're no longer that person. You've outgrown certain things, but your unconscious mind did all this for you outside of your awareness. Your unconscious mind took control of that part of your life, changed it for whatever reason. Maybe it's an environmental reason or just growing as a person. That's the person you wanted to become. But there was some part of you that had an intention that you wanted to overcome this. Let's look at more on this intention thing. Maybe there was a point in your life where you finally stood up to whatever bad thing was happening in your life and you said, you know what? Never again. I'm never ever going through this again. I never want to be this person. And you set an absolute clear, crystal lucid, clear intention. And the next day you were a different person. And maybe you did that for smoking yourself. Maybe you did that for your own weight loss. Maybe you did that to start going to the gym. Maybe you overcome another addiction by just pointing out clearly saying, I don't want this. And it was the right environment set. The right priming had been done and you were in the exact right mind frame to overcome that addiction. And your unconscious mind did it for you. So the idea I want to present to you as the therapist working with clients is how about we set this intention for our clients? We hand over all the power back to them and point out that their unconscious mind will do all this for them. Remember the expectations that our client will come in thinking I've got to perform or I have to do something or I can't go into trance, that type of hard expectations that clients put on themselves. How about we set the right context and let them know that their unconscious mind will do everything for them and all they need to do is just enjoy the experience. Wouldn't that be a nice thing to set as a prime as well? So how do we do this? It's actually very, very simple. So remember all the way back we looked at priming. We've set the idea of safety, set the idea of fun, learning. So directly after our prime, and this is not a separate part of the priming, can actually become one if you like as well, it can become part of that priming conversation, is I point out exactly what I just took you through. I sit there and go, hey, you know what? There's probably certain things that you can remember in your life that you've overcome. Of course they're going to say yes. Everybody has. It's a universal way to grow up in life. And I just want to point out how they did it. So I'll say, hey, there's many things you've overcome in your life. Maybe there were vegetables you didn't like then that you love now. Maybe certain foods and certain drinks you loved as a kid that you don't like now. And you overcome them for the good. And I want you to realize that your unconscious mind did this for you. And I want you to realize that your powerful unconscious mind will not only help you overcome smoking today, but it's really going to let you know about the powerful person you are. And you don't have to do a thing. You just need to enjoy this experience, learn from it, because today's about you. I want you to realize that the way you overcome smoking today is because your unconscious mind knows the exact way for you to do it. And it not only knows that, it knows the exact way that's going to make you feel so great after this session that you'll think back of the smoker you used to be and become quite empowered that you've overcome something that's been ruining your life. I want you to realize that your unconscious mind will do this for you. And you don't have to do a thing. I just want you to realize this right now. That your unconscious mind has looked after you your whole life. And it's going to do this for you today. You should be quite proud that you get to experience your powerful unconscious mind working with you today rather than against you. So consider that little speech I've just gone through. You can hear little priming things I've added to it. But what a nice conversation to have with your client. What's the main idea I'm presenting? That their unconscious mind will do it for them. I'm setting the context. But the context is important. What if I pointed out not only that their unconscious mind will do it for them, what is the context I set for it having done in the past? I've let the unconscious mind know that, hey, you've done things similar to this smoking thing in the past and you did it successfully, so do it again now. Use the same criteria or the same steps you did for the food they liked as a kid that I don't like now, or overcoming heartbreak or overcoming an obstacle in life. Smoking is an obstacle as well. You've done it back then, so do it now. Stop mucking around. This client wants to quit, so do it now. So I'm just letting the unconscious mind know, and I'm pointing out key parts of that person's environment and the way they've grown up to say, hey, unconscious mind, you've done this before. What's stopping you doing this now? And I'm letting the unconscious mind know that as a therapist, I trust it. That I trust my client's unconscious mind that it has all the power in the world to do this. So I'm creating a friendship. This is important. I'm creating a friendship with the client's unconscious mind rather than taking the position of the therapist saying, I know everything. I know how you'll quit because I've helped many people quit before. I know the best way for you to quit. So what's the position I'm taking there? I'm saying to the client's unconscious mind, hey, I know more than you. Now, is this the case? Let's consider this. What's more powerful in your life, your conscious mind or your unconscious mind? Hopefully you said the unconscious mind, and you'd be 100% correct. So I want you to realize as a therapist, if we take the position to say my conscious mind knows more than a client's unconscious mind, you're creating a conflict. So what would the conflict sound like? Let's say you can take this position, you keep forcing this position on the client's unconscious mind. Their unconscious mind might go, hey, all right, big shot. You think you know it all. I'm going to test you. I'm going to make this session so hard for you and see how good you are. Come on. You're telling me about how much you know and how good you think you are. I'm going to make this so hard that this is going to be the worst session you've ever been to. Now, why would an unconscious mind do this? Well, let's consider this in your life. Let's consider you're out at a social event or something like that, and someone comes up to you or a friend and starts pestering you and starts going, I'm better than you. Or, why did you fail at that? I'd never fail at that. And they almost rub your nose in it. They rub your nose in it like a little dog that's made a mistake. And you think, what an asshole. How dare you talk to me like that? All right, if you think you're so good, try this on instead. Try this. Or, I'm going to do this for you and see if you can overcome it. So this is the environment we're creating with that little example. We don't want to create that same environment with the client's unconscious mind. We want to be friends with it. We want it to help us. Now, we're not pleading with it going, please, 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 I need this person to stop quitting, to quit smoking because I need to get paid, I need to pay my bills, all that sort of stuff. Because now we're pleading with it. And it's not a good position to take. The position I want you to take is, hey, all right, unconscious mind, I know you've done this before. So, hey, can you give me a hand? Can you help me today? I'd really appreciate it. And I'm going to let you decide what's the easiest way for this person to quit. I'm going to leave all the power for you. But if you need my help, I'll just push it in the right direction. All the results are up to you because I know you'll do a better job than I ever could. And I want to thank you for doing this for your client or for the person that you are a part of. This is the position I want to take. This is the position I want to take as a therapist with every single smoker and also every single client I work with. I would rather they do all the work because they'll always do a better job. Remember, if I can think of a way that a client would quit, their unconscious mind is going to find an easier and better way every single time because consciously I'm limited. So let me give you an example of a normal clinical approach that a therapist would take. They would usually associate a color to stopping the addiction. So it would sound something like this. Client, every time you drive in the car and you see a red light, you'll think of stopping smoking. Every time you see someone wearing red, you'll think of you're a non-smoker. Every time you see the color green, you realize how powerful you are as a person. Every time you see the number 3, you'll realize that you've overcome something in your life. And it's a great approach, but what am I doing as a therapist? Am I not ripping them off? What if the client never sees red? What if the client never sees green? What if the client's unconscious mind has decided to go down that way to associate color to the stopping of addiction, but has chose purple instead, and you never mentioned purple? What have you done? You've ripped them off. And yes, their unconscious mind could override any suggestion you have, but it will tend to work with you rather than against you if you set it up perfectly. So why not just say, instead of working just with a color, hey, do anything you need to. Even if it's the most bizarre way you need to think of to have this client quit smoking, go ahead and do that. I'm leaving it all up to you, and I will help you at any stage you need me. All you need to do is ask. So hopefully right now you're starting to get the mindset of the different contrasts you can take in regards to the position. So I'm setting the right context. The context is, I'm the therapist, you're the unconscious mind. I will help you when you need it, and I'm going to leave it all up to you to do. When you need my help, you just let me know. How will it let me know? It'll let me know through the client maybe hasn't quit perfectly, or there's something that's still bugging them a little bit, and that's just a little reflection of the unconscious mind saying, hey, can I have a little bit of help here? Can you give me a suggestion just so I know where to start? That's the position I want to take. Rather than, I'm the therapist, I've been trained. I know all. I'll help you quit because I've helped many people quit before, and I know more about you than you. And that's the wrong position to take. So I go through the priming cycle. You can include that little context as well, and it's a lovely conversation to have. It'll really empower your clients. So right now we've set up the prime, we've set up the setting the context, we jumped all the way to the therapy at the end. So what I want to move on to next is, how do we start all of this? Yes, we can start with the prime, absolutely, but let's look at some exclusive questions we can ask, because we want to put our clients into the problem enough so they can experience the pain of it, I guess you could say, before we start to prime them out the other side of it. So let's move down to the next part of our training together. We're not going to look at a set of questions. I'm not going to be giving you these questions. The principle is more important. Then you can create any question you want, because your intention will be set for success. So let's move on to the next part of the training. Let's look at some little hypnotic questions we can ask. See you then. Hello and welcome back to our last session together, looking at this idea of how to dominate your stop smoking sessions. So we've covered things like the testing cycles, we've covered things like priming. So before we get into the questioning cycle or the questioning principles we're going to use with our clients, let me give you the logical steps of how this is all going to play out. So the first step I would approach with a client is to do the questioning first, which we're about to go through in a moment. Then I would do my priming for success and safety, of course. I would set the context, let them know that their unconscious mind has done things in the past for them like this. It's going to do it again. Then I would add my therapy. Now, right now, the therapy can be anything. You can see how even if you've got one of the a not so strong approach for smokers, you can see how we've set it up for that small approach to work in any environment. So even if you have something that you're really not too sure or you haven't had a lot of success with it in the past in regards to a method or an approach, you can see how you've set it all up in your favor beforehand, so the therapy becomes irrelevant. The therapy doesn't become the whole session, it becomes a part of the session. So there's going to be certain things that'll work better than others, of course, but what I want you to realize is any technique can be put into this therapy you find what works for you, rather than looking for the one ultimate technique. Because you've done all the setup beforehand. You've got rid of all the defenses and the cynicism beforehand, so your approach can smoothly fit in and do what it needs to do. And then in the last part was having the testing cycle. And the testing cycle with the environmental testing we looked at before is actually going to connect back to the questions we're going to go through now. We looked at that in regards to finding out what a client's going to do after a session, or finding out their environment they'll go home to, and making sure that fits in your testing scenario as well. So let's look at these questions. Now, there's one point I want to cover throughout these questions is, again, and I will remind you, I won't be giving you exactly what questions I ask. And again, it comes under the same banner. There's no certain questions that'll help a client more than others. All I'm doing with my questioning cycle is I'm starting somewhere. I just need a place to start, and then I'm picking out information that's important. And as you become more advanced in therapy, you'll be able to set your own direction. You'll have your ideas that you'd like to use in the direction you'd like to set. These questions are always coming back to a simple formula, is just to get things going. So what's the principle that's important rather than the questions themselves? The principle right now that I want to cover is I want to dip my client into pain. I want to dip them into the problem so the neurology lights up. Let me give you an example of what this sounds like. So let's say I'm asking a client a question, say, hey, what do you want to work through? Is it smoking you want to go through, or is it something else? Whatever the case may be, let's use smoking. And I say, well, what's the problem with smoking? And they go, I just want to quit because it sounds good. Now, what's the attitude I've just presented there? It doesn't sound like the client's that interested. Could I work with this as a therapist? Probably not. There would have to be things that I have to find out about, what's important about it and all that sort of stuff. But the attitude they've given me is, I really don't want to quit. I'm just maybe quitting because I should, right? Maybe someone's told me to quit. Maybe I'm here because my husband or my wife has told me that I should quit, but I really enjoy it. And as a therapist, you've probably come up against that problem before. Let's do the contrast, the opposite of that. I say to a client, why do you want to quit? What's the problem? They go, you know what, Scott? If I don't quit, I'm going to lose my job. My boss said if I take any more smoke breaks, I'm going to lose my job. If I lose my job, I'm going to lose my pay. I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. My wife's going to leave me, and I'm just going to feel like an absolute horrible person. Now, what's the difference? You can see how much pain my client's presenting to me. Can I work with this? Of course. because I want some emotional leverage. Now, what the questions are about. I'm looking for emotional leverage. If I'm getting no emotional leverage from the other person we looked at with the attitude of I don't really care, it's going to be very hard as a therapist to find out the criteria I need to cover for my stop smoking session. And if they're not that interested, it probably means their unconscious mind really won't help either, because their unconscious mind will say, hey, this person doesn't want to quit, they quite enjoy it, so why would I have them quit? But if a client's feeling the emotions of being a smoker, remember where our feelings are located, they're located in the unconscious mind, it means that maybe their unconscious mind has wanted them to quit for a long time. It just needs a little bit of a push in the right direction. So I need to find emotional leverage. Now, there will be certain questions that will help you get more emotional leverage than others, but it really doesn't matter. If you ask enough questions in regards to them quitting, you're going to be pushing them in the right direction, which means whether you ask one question or you ask 50 questions, it really doesn't matter. I'm looking for emotional leverage. How do I know when I've got it? You usually see clients, they'll present in their tone. Some clients will cry. Some clients will get frustrated that they are a smoker. Some clients will get quite depressed. Some clients will just open up and give you their whole life story and overload you, but at least you know you're finding leverage. You cannot help a client with no leverage. So what sorts of things we need to look for are those criteria. We need to make sure they're feeling it. If they're not feeling it enough, you keep pushing them into this idea of a smoker, asking, if you don't quit, what will you lose out on? What does smoking do for you? How is it a problem? And you want to keep pushing down that road to get more information, because at some point that emotional leverage will present itself. But there is one question and one style of question I'd like to present to add inside this questioning cycle. And as a therapist, you might already have your own questions, and how you do that is at your discretion as well. But what I want to find out from my client is give me a specific scenario. Now, why is this important? What will tend to happen when you start to see clients is a client will come in, you'll ask them about the smoking, and they'll tend to give you different categories. They say, well, I smoke in the car. I smoke when I'm stressed. I smoke when I'm here. I smoke there. I smoke when I'm doing this. I smoke when I'm not doing that. And already they're giving me different categories, and they're giving me their whole life experience of being a smoker. Now, as a therapist, this can be very, very tough to work with all this criteria and all these categories all at once. And why would we? And this is another main reason about why clients will relapse, is because a therapist will try and work with everything all at once and miss the point. Remember the position we talked about before? This is where this idea came from. If we take the position that your unconscious mind will do this for us, the idea I want to have in your mind, and the mindset I want you to take, is let's find out a single time and a single event when they were smoking last. Give me a specific example. I can work on one category at a time, and then have them realize that their unconscious mind just overcome that category. It'll probably find the pattern to do the rest. And this is what we're going to involve inside setting a context. So how do we do this? We want to find a specific scenario and find give me the example I want, so I know where to start. I need some place to start, like dominoes. You push down the first domino. What happens to all the rest if you line them up properly? All of them will follow. So I want you to think of the unconscious mind doing the same. We find the first category they want to work with. The unconscious mind will find the pattern and go, that was easy for them to overcome that category. Well, I'll just do the rest now as well while we're here. Why have a client relapse? That's the attitude I want you to have about their unconscious mind. And it's a very strong attitude to have, and it will really work in your favor, and you'll be very surprised just by taking on board that mindset, how successful you'll be as a therapist working with smokers. So I want a specific example. When and where? So I asked Joe Blogs, when did you smoke last? Well, I smoked yesterday. Okay, where were you? I was at home or sitting on a couch and I was bored. Excellent. I've got my first category. Now I can work with this and we'll go through the same techniques, the same priming, all that sort of stuff. And I want to make sure I've got some emotional leverage. So why are we smoking on the couch? Oh, Scott, I just had the worst day. I just found out that maybe my wife was cheating on me. Sorry for the horrible example, but let's just use this for now since it's come up. My wife's cheating on me, sitting on the couch, and I was just contemplating the rest of my life, and I was stressed, I was angry, I was frustrated. Have we got emotional leverage? You better believe we have. So I can work with that category. If I simply ask, what we do on the couch, and they go, I was just bored, just had a smoke. I would probably want to ask them, okay, when's another time? Because I want that leverage. So once I've got the leverage, I can start to work with it. It's that simple. But what tends to happen is a client will go, well, it was yesterday, I was sitting on my couch, I was a little bit stressed, had a smoke. because I just got back from work. I was so stressed. I was actually smoking all the way through work. And actually, I found myself actually smoking in the car. I normally don't smoke in the car either. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop at the pub on the way home before I go home, standing there with my mates. I was smoking the whole time. And they'll continue to go on and create such a big event when all I want is one specific example. So how do we get through this example? It's very simple. As soon as they give me one and I hear the leverage, if they start to give me more, I'll say, hey, let's just push those aside for now. Let's just concentrate on you at home. You told me you were stressed. You were contemplating your wife cheating on you, were feeling stressed, and you had the smoke then. Let's work on that now. So I'm working on a small chunk level rather than a massive story that they're giving me, because I'm setting those dominoes up. I want to flick over the first domino. I don't want to wave my hand over the whole thing because I'll mess them up. I want to watch them fall over in a nice pattern. So I hit the first domino. I've got my first category. And then I allow the unconscious mind to find the pattern that works for them. I allow their unconscious mind to work out how they can best overcome that problem using that category first. So once I've done that, let's say I've gone through that, I'm going to prime and say, hey, I know you're feeling bad about smoking now and about everything that was happening, but I want you to realize you're here for safety, success, and I'll set them for priming for success and all that good stuff. Then I'll set the context about their unconscious mind, realizing that they've done it before. And then I'll do my therapy, and then I'm going to do my testing at the end. Now, if I hear through my questions at the start that there's some information that I can use for my testing later, perfect. It gives me some more information to use for my testing rather than having to think of what I'll say. I'll say, hey, you told me you were having a smoke on the couch. Think about yourself on the couch right now. Do you think you'll have a smoke? You can see how that information will fit. The emotional leverage is key. This emotional leverage will follow them throughout the session. And I want you to realize that if they're feeling the problem, it means their unconscious mind is on board as well. If they're not, it means their unconscious mind's probably doing something else or is not quite ready. I want to get that emotion out of them and put that down as leverage. So the last thing I want to present to you is how do we work with the rest of the categories? You can see how the rest of the categories is a therapist would send a client away and say, hey, we'll work on this next time. After that, we'll work on this other one next time. Or maybe they've got those pre-planned 5 or 6 categories that they think all clients must go through, so they'll present their session like so. I want to introduce you to an idea I put together called fractionation retesting. So where does this sit? It's actually quite simple. Clients come out of trance. I'm going to test them. Do all my testing, and they say, no, I'm not going to smoke. And you're going, yep, awesome. Before they leave, I want to have another little chat to them. We call this a fractionation retest or another little context or priming story, if you will. And I'm going to point out that they did this. And it's going to sound something like this. I want you to realize, and I understand that you said that you not only smoke when you're stressed, you smoke when you're hungry and when you're angry. And I can give whatever category I want at that point. I want to use all the ones they've given me rather than ones I've thought of myself. And I want you to realize that you did this before. You overcome smoking today, and you have no idea how you did that. So I want you to close your eyes again for me. I want you to understand that your unconscious mind is powerful enough to not only overcome this part of your life, but it's probably found the exact way it could overcome all this other stuff, like the hunger, the anger, the frustration, all that stuff. I want you to realize all you need to do is just sit there now. So I want your unconscious mind to spend all the time it needs to just overcome anything else that would stop you from being a non-smoker, to find every scenario, to uncover any idea or emotion that would have you smoking again, because I want you to walk out of here being a non-smoker for the rest of your life. So I want you to sit there and just enjoy this trance again. And I don't know how long it'll take. I want your unconscious mind to realize that it can take all the time it needs to find out any scenario, anything at all, big and small, that would have you being a smoker again. So you can hear the same frame that I'm setting. It sounds like a little priming story, but what am I priming now? What am I setting as a context? I'm letting them know, I'm basically directly talking to their unconscious mind saying, hey, you just helped them overcome that category of smoking. Do the rest now. Let's not do it later. Let's do it now. You're here. You found the pattern. You enjoyed the experience. So get it all done now. And again, I'm putting all the power back into their unconscious mind. I'm keeping my position the same. So, hey, you just did this. Great job. Can you please do all the rest? Let's get it all done now. Let's get it all out in the open. Let's overcome everything now so I don't have to see this client again. And it's almost like I'm putting them back in trance. May not be as deep, it might be quite light, but that's where the fractionation idea comes into it. But I'm just putting them in there. As they come out, I'll do a little test again. I might go through the whole testing cycle, But usually at this point, a client is so empowered right now that anything you could say, hey, how do you feel about the pub smoking now? Nah, I'm good. I'll never smoke again. How do you feel about being stressed that you found your wife, unfortunately cheating on you? Oh, I don't care about her right now. I'm so happy right now. I'm a non-smoker. I'll get on with my life. It'll be fine. We'll work it out, whatever the case may be. So right now, you notice I'm keep repeating the same steps over and over. So realistically, if you look at everything we've covered, the technique itself becomes irrelevant. But that's when most therapists put all their own anxieties and worries into it, going, what technique should I use? What method should I use? It becomes irrelevant. Set it up beforehand, set it up afterwards, do the fractionation retest again, a little speech to say, hey, get everything done now. Clear out anything, any possibility that would have you smoking again. Do it now. And all you need to do, client, is just sit there, allow your unconscious mind to do it for you. And you'll know when it's done because your eyes will open, you'll feel amazing, whatever frame you want to set for it. So this is how, putting these steps in together, we can set up the session, we can end the session, we can conclude the session, and we can stop relapse with that little fractionation retest. So right now we've done all the work before the session's actually started and the end of the session, so your technique becomes irrelevant. You can use any good technique, bad technique, or in-between technique, and you're starting to set yourself up for success. So what I want to do is put that all together for you, give you those steps again. So we start with questioning. We're going to put them into pain. We just want to spend a couple of minutes, get some emotional leverage, make sure they're feeling this idea of being a smoker and what they don't like about it, etc. We're priming for success, setting a context for quitting. Your therapy goes in right there. And the last part is just the testing with a fractionation retest at the end, and you are done. And you can expect your clients to come out not only thinking, wow, what a magnificent therapist, but the therapist really took care of me. And this is a great story that will follow you as a therapist. But before we end up on our training today of how to dominate the smoking industry, I want to cover a couple of troubleshooting ideas that tend to be presented, and a lot of things I hear from other therapists that we train, and ideas that come up that tend to work against therapists rather than work with them. So this idea of client relapsing, I think the most common issue for a client saying, hey, it didn't work, is because a therapist will not test them. They don't do the fractionation retest that well. And also it might be a number of things. It could be the questioning at the start. It could be the priming for success. It could be any of those categories. But I think the most dominant thing is a therapist trying to work with the whole life scenario. They try and work with too much of a big chunk, trying to get it all done in one little technique. The approach is correct, but just take one little chunk at a time and then just point out that their unconscious mind can do the rest. Another troubleshooting idea is this idea of what do I do with a client who comes in who doesn't seem that interested to quit, or they come in because their partner or their friends has told them they should. The easiest thing to do is just send them home. We cannot work with clients that do not want to change. Even if they insist, hey, my wife really wants to quit, I want to quit, it needs to be the other way around. The client needs to tell us, hey, I want to quit, and my wife would love if I did. We want to make sure that the client wants to quit, and the client wants to quit for their reasons, not because they should or not because they've been told they shouldn't, and not to quit because it's the healthiest way to live their life. We want to make sure there's some emotional leverage, and you'll find this out through the questioning cycle. But if you run into it, you're not quite sure, just send them home and have them really consider it before they come back in if you're not too sure. The last troubleshooting idea I want to present is probably one of the most common things. What if my client needs to come back for a second session? It's very, very simple. Client comes in, sits down, you just ask them, hey, what happened? I want to set a starting point. And they say, well, I quit at all these other places and I wasn't smoking at the pub, I wasn't smoking when I was stressed, but then I realized I'm actually going away on a holiday, and that made me a little bit stressed because I'm traveling alone. It's the first time I'm going to go overseas, and I think I'll probably have a smoke just to calm down my stress. Excellent. It doesn't mean you've failed as a therapist. It just means that they've realized that they left something out they didn't tell you, and you can just work on it then and there. Take them through the whole process, but you'll probably find it working about a quarter of the time because their unconscious mind will pick up on the pattern that helped it last time. So I want you to realize, for you as a therapist, your client comes back, I call these little mini power sessions. It's just cleaning up the last bit of dust, if you will, that was left on the floor of the smoker. Clean that up, and the whole house will be clean. The whole house being their unconscious mind will be nice and clean for them. So it's a little troubleshooting idea to work around, is not to say, oh my God, I failed. I was supposed to do it in one session, but now it's two. No. You'll more than likely find your client will come in almost apologetic, saying, oh, I forgot to tell you this last time. I just want to make sure I cover this. So that is the entire how to dominate the setup of your stop smoking clients and how to still charge a premium rate. So how do you charge this premium rate? There's nothing stopping you from doing these sessions in one session and charging the same as a therapist that would charge for 6. And could you imagine promoting yourself like that, saying, I do this in one session? Imagine the intrigue you'll get from clients. Now, there's nothing to say you can't do it in 6 or 10 sessions, that's fine. But it comes to a point where you start wasting a client's time. And if a client realizes it's going to take 6 sessions, that means there's possibility of 5 failures they'll have before they quit. It could set them up for a bad environment anyway. But who wants to quit at things? Who wants to fail at things, right? We want to set it up so, hey, you'll quit in this one session. We want to prime for success every time. And I want you as the therapist to take this away and prime your own success. So when you nail these maneuvers inside your clinical therapy setup or your career as a therapist, let people know. There is nothing stopping you saying, I do sessions in one session. Come along, it'll be easy. Everyone quits in one session. You'll have fun and you know exactly what you need to do. There's a little priming scenario for you there. So I really hope you enjoyed this. This is something that I use exclusively with every single smoker I work with. And it's been nothing but easier for myself as a therapist, knowing I used to do it the old way too. It's taken me many sessions to get through it because there was no setup. I jumped straight into the session, no setup. And after a couple of failures of that, I wasn't happy. So I thought of new ways to do things. And this is one of the easiest ways that I've found to add to my sessions. It's just success after success. And that's my ultimate goal for you, is to have fun with smoking sessions, and to make sure that you can still charge that premium rate and have people looking at you as the dominant force to help them overcome smoking, and you become known as the stop smoking therapist, which increases your career, increases your income, increases your success, and you start to have fun with therapy again. So that's all from me from now. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear your success with this. Take these ideas away, put them inside of your session, and I hope to see you on our next training, which we're going to start to refine different types of therapy, refine different techniques and methods that you can use to become the ultimate successful therapist I know you want to be. So until then, this is Scott Jansen, and we hope to see you and hear from you in our later courses. And that's thank you from everyone from the Conversational Hypnosis Academy. Enjoy, and we'll see you very soon.